my favorite thing is the birthday message to a friend, but it's like, let's say it's 6 pictures of them and their friend, but it's not 6 pictures of their friend. It's 6 pictures of them and their friend where they look better than the friend, or they're in front of the friend, which is my favorite ever, because it's like, happy birthday to my BFF. And Susie's like in the background in a shadow, and the girl saying it is in the front and looks awesome. And you're like, this is really like the harshest put down of Susie. Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rayford Dalton Palmer, and with me, Rahul Iyer, as always, coming at you from Chicagoland. And we got another jam-packed episode for you today with some great stuff. You know, we like to have entertainment and education. We got both in this episode. So first, we're talking about J Biebs because we love our Justin Bieber stories for you believers. And we got a Justin Bieber marriage in trouble rumors we'll go into. We've got Jeff Bezos because we got to talk about the Blue Origin rocket launch with his girlfriend and the whole thing. It's so great, especially because we've been talking about the upcoming giant wedding on the yacht or wherever it is in Italy. But we've got the rocket launch before that. Then next is Tony Braxton's secret wedding story, which Rahul and I were not aware of. Tony Braxton's secret wedding in 2024. And there was a news article that just came out about it. We're going to talk about that one. And then this social media thing came out where a lady's getting divorced because of being gaslighted by her husband. But we're going to tell you the special way that she discovered that she was being gaslighted. And this is what they call in the radio biz, tease and please, ladies and gentlemen. We are teasing you with this one because I don't want to spill the beans on what this is about because it's kind of a funny punchline. And then in this episode, we want to talk about strategies for dealing with a difficult soon-to-be ex or their lawyer when they won't disclose information. So what do you do when they're withholding information or playing games with the information? You need to gather these facts to move your divorce ahead. So we've talked about this topic in episode 28, but we're really talking about kind of like the short story I would say is like, hey, rich people, don't be jerks. You might as well hand the information over and don't be sneaky about it. It's not worth it in the long run. It goes for anybody, not just wealthy people. So we talked about that, but we didn't say what happens if you're on the other side of that. How do you address that strategically and tactically? We're going to talk about that in a way that you'll understand, and maybe it'll help you with your case. And then finally, we have client questions, one about keeping the house, a couple other ones that we'll go into. We always like answer questions from the audience. So that's it. We are ready to rock and roll. Let's dive into it. So we're ready here to go with the J Biebs story. So this is too good to pass up. Bieber got a tattoo for Haley, allegedly, amid divorce buzz in 2025. Is it true love or just damage control? Let's talk about it. So we do only deep topics here on this show. Remember, we're not just another boring divorce podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Fans think J Biebs debuted a new H tattoo as a sweet tribute to Haley Bieber. He showed off the ink amid breakup rumors. This story by Samantha Olson on Cosmopolitan, where we get some very hard-hitting journalism. Cosmo, now my mom used to subscribe to Cosmo when I was like in grade school and high school, and I look at the pictures of the pretty ladies and I was like, wow, this is great. But the thing that I always thought was funny about Cosmopolitan, if you get it regularly or you see it on the newsstand, the stories seem to go into like a cycle, right? First issue is like, you don't need a man. It's like, and it's about like celebs telling you that they don't need a man in their lives and all that stuff. And then the next month, it's how to get a man. And then the month after that, it's like, are you and your man getting serious? And then the one after that is, why won't your man get engaged with you? How to get him to get engaged. And then the next one's like wedding tips for your man. And then after a couple more, it comes full circle. It's like, you don't need that man. You can dump him. And then we go back to the next, cycle, which is, how to find a man. I'm totally exaggerating, but I'm guessing you get what I'm saying. And they must figure people only subscribe for 1 year. And they have kind of this planning cycle. Now, I don't know if they still do that with the magazine, but it was kind of like fashion and beauty. And they had models in it. And they had like celeb stuff. It was like back in the day, like in the 80s, it was a thicker magazine full of like more high-end fashion ads and stuff. And now they're pretty much on the web. But I think it's hilarious they got this Bieber story. So if you ever read like those wedding magazines, you're like, how do these guys stay in business? Well, they figure somebody new is subscribing for the 12 months and then that's it, right? So you're not going to subscribe to the fit pregnancy for more than 9 months, basically, right? Okay. But I digress. All right, let's get into this. So J Beebs added a new design to his extensive tattoo collection. By the way, my cousin's an excellent tattoo artist in Chicago. If anybody needs a reference, I'm happy to give you one. I'm not a tattoo guy. I have none. I am as my mother and father made me and the Lord. So that's it. I have no tattoos, nothing against it, just not a fan myself. I think my generation, or up to a certain age of my generation, it wasn't a thing. And then literally people a few years younger, my sister's age, my cousin's age, I'm Gen X, I'm solidly Gen X, but people just a few years younger, tattoos started becoming a thing. Like I would say in the 90s. Now it's like all over the place. But the new tat on his wrist, they saw this on some Insta Live he had. It reads H22. Now, the funny thing about it, and we can't show it to you just the way our technology is here. We can link to the story, though. You got to check this out because he put an extremely small H22 on his wrist. And longtime believer being somebody who loves J Beebs, speculated it was a sweet tribute to his wife, Hailey Bieber. Some Reddit users, which is a source of true genius, pointed out the design script makes it look like an H and J combined as an homage to the Rode founder and their son, Jack Blues Bieber. What is Rode? Do you know what it is? RHODE?
I think it's Hailey Bieber's skincare brand. Yeah, so her name is Hailey Rode Bieber.
By the way,
yes.
If Rode is interested in sponsoring the show, we'll accept free products or, we'll do product placement. Hailey and Jack were born on November 22 and August 22, respectively. So that's super deep. H22 on the tattoo, by the way. He debuted the ink amid rumors regarding his relationship status with Hailey as the couple made headlines last week for seemingly unfollowing each other on social, which, by the way, is the new way to break up cold style. You don't even call anybody, you just unfollow.
And then you'll have the detectives on social find it and say, these people have unfollowed each other. Like, how do you know that? Are you like checking it out all the time, seeing who's on someone's follow list?
Who's watching? And then, but the best thing is they're married. So you'd think they would, unfollowing would be like the least of the issues going on, but okay.
Yeah.
So now articles online even contain like text message acronyms. So that the author now writes ICYMI, in case you missed it, for those of you uneducated in internet slang. Justin allegedly deactivated his Insta account and reactivated it shortly after. Big doings. According to a TikTok comment from Hailey, I love the forensic analysis of the social media post. A technical issue made it look like she unfollowed her husband in the process. She said, and this is a quote, "It's a glitch. Didn't unfollow him. Hope this helps!" Exclamation point. She wrote. Per People, that all went down 2 months after he seemingly unfollowed his wife amid rumored reports about their marriage. He later confirmed, however, and I quote, "Someone went on my account and unfollowed my wife. Shit is getting sus out there."
Real sus.
Again, translation for those of you maybe above a certain age, sus meaning suspect. Yes, suspicious. We provide a valuable public service. We're not quite sure where things stand, but we'll keep on top of this for further developments in case something goes sideways, This show today ties through a number of threads that we talk about. And this one is over-the-top gestures of love. The too big wedding ring, we talk about the destination wedding, and things kind of don't have a genuineness problem. If you have to get a tattoo to show your true love for your wife, who you're already married to, I'm not sure that that's super solid.
Yeah, it's the timing is weird. You've heard about this in the news the past for a while now about, are they on the hot seat? Are they together or not? Are they going to get divorced? So their love story seems to be very, very front and center in the news cycle. And every time it gets a little silent out there with nothing new, they'll say, well, what's going on with Justin and Hailey? Weird. Why would you get a tattoo?
Then let's go mine their social media to see if anything sus is going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, but yeah, you're right. It's like you're going out and getting a tattoo to really prove I care about it. For everybody else out in the world, right? You're not doing it for the two of you because she knows. I mean, what does she care if you get a tattoo or not?
Right. Well, and the other thing is like go big or go home. If you're professing your love, you put a little H22 on your wrist. Of course, we don't know that this is what it's about. This is speculation, but one wonders. But the funnier thing too is this ties into that whole thing we've talked about before about the social media professions of love. Everybody knows that picture, and there's a meme now, which is like the picture of the couple like kissing or whatever that they post on the anniversary, and they profess all their love for their spouse. And it's like, who is this for exactly? We weren't doubting that you're married, or let's say it's a longtime couple, but typically with the married couples, what I'm getting at, you're married. We sort of assumed you're loving each other. You post this thing with pictures of you embracing or whatever for the public, who are already assuming you're in love. So it's a little weird.
Yeah, because it's like, I wasn't even thinking about you. I wasn't thinking about your marriage. And then you go out and post this. And now I'm wondering, why did you post this? Is something going on?
Right.
Like, you don't walk out of a convenience store and say, just a heads up, I didn't take anything. They'll say, why'd you tell me that? Now I'm suspicious. Come over here. What's in your pocket?
There is a bit of the performative thing. And now, socialists turned us all into actors, and it's a little look at me for some folks, and they just want the attention. My favorite thing is I've seen this especially with younger people, but mostly girls. And also, obviously we know younger people in our family and stuff like that. My favorite thing is the birthday message to a friend, to a bestie, right? But it's like, let's say it's 6 pictures of them and their friend, but it's not 6 pictures of their friend. It's 6 pictures of them and their friend where they look better than the friend, or they're in front of the friend, yes. Which is my favorite ever, because it's like, Susie, so, happy birthday to my BFF. And Susie's like in the background in a shadow, and the girl saying it is in the front and looks awesome. And you're like, this is really like the harshest put down of Susie.
Well, and then Susie will use that same picture and put it on her Hinge profile and say, this is me. And then now you're like, wait, who am I actually talking to here? Am I talking to her friend, or am I talking to the out of focus Susie who's in the back?
Wow, that's beautiful. That's like, folks, don't do that. Don't do multiple people in your dating app profiles. Which one is it? Or they're just showing you they hang out with pretty people? Is that what they're trying to show you? It's not clear.
It's like you print them all out and you start crossing like the ones that don't appear in multiple photos until you're down to like 2 of them. And you're like, these 2 are in every photo. Which one is Susie?
Oh, so great. Okay, so this ties into one of our favorite new topics, which is Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
So we've riffed about Jeff before and his upcoming nuptials in the last episode. We talked about the wedding on the yacht, near the yacht. We're not sure. But as you've heard in the news, he launched Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez, like Gayle King, like most interesting coffee clutch of ladies, got blasted into space for like 10 minutes and came back. They went past the Kármán line. For those of you who don't know, the Kármán line is defined as when you go into space. Like, what is actually space? Well, is it high altitude, or are we actually into space? They blasted them above the Kármán line, so technically they're in space. It's not exactly the right stuff, John Glenn level stuff. They had little blue outfits on, and they launched up there, and they looked around, and they came right back down. Rahul, you set the stage for us and tell us about this, because a lot of people have seen part of this, but they haven't seen this thing you uncovered. What's the scoop?
Yes. So this thing is hilarious on many, many levels. We always riff about how hard, Bezos has to try to seem cool.
Even though he's worth more than everybody.
Exactly. There's nothing he needs to do. He's already cool. Just if he sits around and does nothing, he's cool. But he tries so hard, it's sort of like, well, now you're trying too hard and you kind of just look lame. So it's sort of the same thing here. First, I think this is a video most people would have seen if you're kind of on social, just kind of on X, formerly known as Twitter, or anything else. You would have seen, he goes up right after they land, after their 10-minute voyage. He goes up to the capsule, and as he's encircling the capsule.
For those of you who haven't seen it, they land in a field.
They land in a field.
Just on the ground somewhere.
Right.
It's not like not a splashdown.
It's not a splash. It's not in the water. It's Jeff Bezos doesn't yet walk on water. So he's
right.
He's just walking on land. And so it touches down. It's got parachutes that come up and stuff. It lands, and then he drives up. He's all excited. He's like encircling it. And all of a sudden, there's like this little like crevice that he doesn't see, like a little bump or like a little opening in the ground.
Yeah, like
very small.
A chuck hole.
Yeah, exactly. He just falls, and he doesn't fall. He doesn't trip. He doesn't stumble. He like face plants, just like whack. He goes all the way down. So kind of amusing, because then he's all dressed all like in his like bodybuilder black t-shirt that's tight, man. Skin tight and jeans. He's got this cool sunglasses on, looking like a supervillain. But then he face plants.
He was trying to look cool to be like the Sir Galahad coming up to like rescue his lady out of the capsule, And so that's why this gets even better, because he does a pratfall, face plants.
That's how it starts. And then he goes up to the door, and he wants to do this grand unveiling, grand opening ceremony where he welcomes his astronauts back to Earth. Right. So he goes up there, but someone inside already opened up the capsule door, and they were about to come out. And then you can see somebody else who's on this side of Earth with Bezos rushes to shut the capsule, because Bezos has to be the one to open it for them. So then you can see them open it, they close it again, lock it up, and then he uses this contraption to go ahead and reopen it.
It looks
and
like a lug wrench.
Yeah, it looks like a lug wrench. So
He
I'm like,
basically, he's trying to fumble with the lug wrench to get it out the door and open it. It's so fake. And,
it's
and
just
nobody, and Rahul found this and I couldn't believe it, but there's a story about it.
it's a story about it on dailymail.com. Careful when you go to that website. Your
Oh, yeah.
computer might get cancer. But
Oh my, the pop-ups are out of control.
but it's just hilarious. Now, this article kind of talks about how it's conspiracy. They never actually went to space. They went to space, guys. Like they obviously did. Space,
did.
whatever you want to call it. But they went up there and came back. And we actually saw an X post where it was like it took them less time to go from Earth to space and come back than it takes somebody in Chicago to go from Lincoln Park to the Loop, which for people who don't know is like 3 miles away. Just with Chicago traffic, it takes like a half an hour. But it's like, and the Loop is like short for downtown Chicago. So it's sort of hilarious that their space voyage was less shorter than your commute from the city to the city. So
yeah, Chicago trivia. The Loop was named after the original streetcar loop that was in the ground. Chicago had the largest streetcar system in the world. Good bar trivia. People will say San Francisco, but Chicago had the largest streetcar system in the world.
And then there are these photos here where you can see him just putting his hand up in victory formation, right? It's just like, yes, we did it. And then you can see every single one of them sort of lined up. Katy Perry landed and kissed the earth. And it was, the whole thing was so like overproduced and over dramatic. And it's just, they didn't go where SpaceX goes. SpaceX goes to actual space. It goes to the space station. It rescues people.
Elon's orbiting the Earth and he's planning a ship that'll be actually interplanetary. I'm just going to say the rocket is very unfortunate looking or unusual. So you can fill the blanks in on that one.
It's funny because all these billionaires have their own little foibles. When Elon built his spaceship, he says he was inspired by the movie The Dictator with Sacha Baron Cohen that came out several years ago. In the movie, this dictator, Sacha, who is like this Middle Eastern dictator apparently, who he plays, he says, I want you to make the ship more pointy because that's what it looks like in the cartoon. So when Elon told his engineers, he's like, that looks good, but please make it more pointy.
Make it more pointy. That's so great.
So everyone's got their inspiration, and Bezos probably got his somewhere. So
yeah, I'm sure there were design requirements or something. I don't know, but one wonders. Starship and the big booster they're building. It looks like it's beautiful because it's like, I don't know if it's stainless steel or what, but it's like bare metal. This is Elon's or SpaceX's rocket, but the big one they're building. But it looks like a sci-fi ship. It looks like a ship out of a 1930s serial from like Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or something. It's really kind of amazing. Okay, well, we're going to keep on moving here, but this one's great. Bezos' story was too good to pass up. That is a divorce in the making, folks. I just guarantee, I'm not trying to wish ill on anybody, but you could just tell when the vibes are off. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but it's like got all the indications of a weird thing going on between them. But hey, what do I know? Okay, I don't mean to, nobody cares what this guy thinks over here. Bezos is doing fine without me. So, okay, let's move on. Next, we've got Toni Braxton's secret wedding. So, unbeknownst to us, Toni Braxton secretly got married, and this one was too good to pass up. From Us Magazine, an April 10th story, and this is why this just came out, but it's interesting because TMZ obtained documents that Birdman and Toni Braxton, I was clueless about who Birdman was. He's a rapper. They got married August 8th, 2024. 2 weeks later, however, Braxton reportedly filed for divorce and listed date of separation as August 10th. That means they separated 2 days after the wedding, folks. But apparently, the singer and her attorney called the marriage irretrievably broken in court documents per TMZ. What would we do without TMZ, by the way, for good info? In January, though, Braxton and Birdman apparently 56, so Gen Xer like me, both dismissed a divorce petition, seemingly confirming their marriage is still intact. Okay, good on them. Us Weekly's reached out to the teams for comment for both. Haven't heard back. Birdman, born Brian Christopher Williams, first started dating in 2016 before getting engaged 2 years later. So this is one. So this ties into the super long engagement, not good theory we talked about last show. 6-year engagement, you're not going to get married, folks. Or if you do, you're cruising for a bruising. And then she was excited in this clip. She said she was engaged. This is back in 2016. 2019, fans questioned whether the pair were still engaged. And what did we just talk about? Why did they question they were still engaged? Because they unfollowed each other on social media.
Yes,
The kiss of death.
This has all the signs, right? It has all the signs. It's got the secret engagement, the secret wedding, the social media unfollow, the super long engagement. I mean, I don't know if it was a secret engagement. It was a super long engagement.
We could create like a divorce predictor where you click buttons on the web and you like, secret wedding, destination wedding, too big engagement ring, like add all that stuff in. And then you click all those and you get the percentage level of success of your marriage. This ties into so many great things. Super long engagement, but this ties into like all this stuff. So we talked about destination weddings generally we're skeptical about, right? But this is even a step further. You get married in secret. So nobody knows you're getting married. That doesn't exactly show a real commitment to each other. I understand being secretive, but not secret, meaning you don't want all the press and paparazzi. And there's no comment here about how many people were at the wedding or anything. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through this article to see. There's nothing more here. So I don't know if they had anybody there or, I'm assuming it's truly secret, meaning nobody knew, where you're kind of saying to the world, you're not really saying to the world, I care about this person enough to make it public. So kind of questionable. So folks, rushed weddings can lead to quick splits on the back end. And if it's secret, it's probably not a good sign. And this extended engagement, also not great. Kind of a bunch of red flags. So this ties in here to a couple of interesting stories I have to tell briefly. So the shortest marriage I ever did, and I want to hear about yours if you've got one, Rahul, if you can remember if it's unusually short, but I had a woman come in and talk to me 17 days after she got married, 2-week honeymoon. The guy cheated on her during the honeymoon down in Jamaica. And first of all, they were at Sandals, according to what I recall. If any of you have been to Sandals, it's for couples only. And most people are like newlyweds and stuff, or they're, into each other. It's supposed to be a romantic thing. So this dude is preying on, or he's finding other people to hook up with on what's supposed to be his honeymoon at Sandals, which is, to me, seems like not easy to do, but maybe I'm naive. Anyway, so he cheats on her. And by the way, she then tells me, oh yeah, he cheated on me when we were dating, but I thought if we got engaged, he would take it seriously. Then he cheated on me during the engagement. And, when we got married, he apologized and said it'd be okay. I have a safety tip for you. If your guy cheats on you when you're dating and when you're engaged, chances are it's not a marriage you should follow through. And then the other one is potential client called me. This is many years ago. And they said, I've only been married a short time. Is there some kind of like time period in which you can like reconsider? And I said, no. And they said, well, isn't there like something where they likened it to like returning stuff to the store? In Illinois, we actually have like 3 things that statutorily, so by state law, they have a mandatory return period. I believe it was 3 days when I last checked for a gym membership. There is nothing like that for getting married. The minute you're married, you have to get divorced. So just keep that in mind. Take it seriously.
Right, exactly. Get a trial run. You can cancel your subscription. No money down. No questions, no commitments. 30 days. If you like it, then you keep it. If you don't,
exactly. Which of course is why
we want prenup. We want prenup.
Which why we always want prenup. Next, this is a good one. So Rahul, tell us about this. We teased in with this, and now you have to please. So you got to deliver on the promise.
That's right. There you go. Absolutely.
So we talked about this gaslighting thing. What's the deal with this person? What tells the story?
So essentially, a woman divorced her husband after she claims he tightened jar lids to gaslight her into her asking him for help every time. She'll be the damsel in distress and he'll be the shining prince who comes, prince in shining armor, whatever the phrase is, to come save her. And so the question becomes, are small betrayals deal breakers? This is a BuzzFeed article that initially came out of a Reddit, AITA, again, an acronym for the kids out there, which is Am I the A-hole, basically. And this is a very bizarre article. It's very amusing, but it also gets into some very interesting and unnecessary specifics that it's just kind of like, I'm not sure why the article gets into all that.
What are the unnecessary specifics?
Essentially, the article by Michaela Bramwell, a BuzzFeed staff, says this woman just found out that her husband has been purposely tightening all of her jar lids for the last 5 years. Now she's divorcing him for gaslighting her. The quote is, he still won't admit that he tightened the lids on purpose. He suggested we go to marriage counseling, but I refused. There is no point. He's not going to stop tightening the jar lids, I guess. So basically what happens is she says his over-tightening of jar lids has been an issue since he was first just visiting their house when they were dating. This is like apparently his thing. First, it started with just things he used. And then over time, it became every damn glass jar and a metal lid. He tightened them so much I couldn't open them without assistance. If it wasn't a big deal if he was there, but if I was alone, there's more times than I can count where I couldn't open a jar lid. I guess she freaked out, had a major meltdown, screamed, frustrated, and seems crazy because it just is a lid. Then it slowly would get better for a while, and then it would be an issue again. And so she said he initially claimed that it was because he wanted to keep the food fresh. And then after many arguments, she insisted that she doesn't believe it keeps anything fresh. Even if it does make things last longer, it doesn't mean she can't eat her food when she wants. It's funny because here's where it gets really kind of funny and amusing as well. Like, so about a month ago, she said he had a family emergency and had to travel out of state for 10 days. The first day he was gone, she found a jar she couldn't open. And so she was going to go to the store to buy new pickles when this neighbor said hi and wanted to know if she needed anything when he was out. So here I'm like, oh, what's going on with this neighbor? I said, wait here, and I got the jar, which he opened. The next day, he came back outside to her house and she asked him to open another jar. But he offered to come in and open all the jars for her, and she agreed.
Oh, yeah, which is the start of like a softcore Netflix R-rated movie. Can you come over and open all my jars? Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll be right over.
Like Justin Bieber likes to say, shit's getting sus, right? And he went to the fridge and opened all the jars except 2, which he claimed he couldn't open. She thanked him profusely, quotes, and told him she would bake some of his favorite cookies later in the week.
Oh, wow. Good for him. Good.
So this is where it gets, I think, even more amusing and curious. He laughed and said it was no big deal, and after confirming that I wouldn't be upset if the remaining 2 jars were destroyed in his attempt to open them, he took them home to his garage to open them one way or another. He said he's heard me screaming about the over-tightened jar lids for a few times over the years, and he's really pondered if I was crazy or if my husband was really over-tightening the jar lids. That was his neighbor's concern. So this neighbor, helpful neighbor, then held up the 2 jars he couldn't open and said, I don't know why he's doing it, but it wasn't an accident. So that's what this neighbor tells her. After he left, I locked the door, sat on my kitchen floor, and cried. Then I felt hot and lightheaded. I vomited in the trash can. And then I thought maybe I was having a heart attack. But then instead of calling an ambulance, I just sat back.
I've had a hard time believing it, any of this. Then I realized it's so weird. At least a good chunk of it has to be true.
And so she's like, there was literally no other issues, but he couldn't open a jar of hot fudge, so he broke it and apologized. I couldn't sleep that night, and then everything else with my husband is great, but he won't stop gaslighting me. He said the hot pepper paste is in the back of the fridge with a tight lid because we only use it to make Indian food, and we never make it all the time, so who cares? You know, stuff like that. So essentially, very amusing article for all of you. Please take a look at it. Very entertaining. But again, we talk about things that are reasons for getting divorced, and this would be something that you would say the marriage was irretrievably broken, at least for her.
So next, the topic I want to talk about, like divorce purposes or real divorce strategy, is discovery being difficult in trials. So basically we want to talk about what discovery means in a divorce case and strategy. So especially in a situation when you're dealing with the difficult soon-to-be ex and maybe their lawyer is tough. So the question we get very frequently is, what do I do when this case is stalled out? They're not producing documents. They're not producing tax returns, pay stubs, financial information. How do I move the case forward? We'll start with the basic concept. So what is discovery? Discovery is a legal process by which you exchange information in a divorce case so that you can get the evidence necessary for the court to evaluate your case and have a trial or settle the case or ultimately put on evidence at trial. Discovery is quite broad, and the rules on what you can gather are pretty loose by design. So things that might not be admitted into evidence at trial are okay to get in discovery. So we have certain rules of evidence that allow things to be considered by the judge, and certain things can't be considered by the court, but would be relevant in discovery. So, for example, all of the communications between people, a series of emails, let's say, between a therapist and let's say there's a marriage counselor with emails back and forth between the couple. And I've had a real case like this. And those emails are discoverable, meaning the lawyers should have access to all those messages between the husband and wife and the spouses and the counselor. However, the stuff that there's probably a lot of material in those communications that's not admissible into evidence. And I won't get into all the details, but as one example from a real case, we had a case where our client was involved in counseling with a marriage counselor and the spouse, and the counselor sent an email to the husband, and the email said, in my opinion, we can't go on with marriage counseling because your wife, who is our client, has XYZ mental health problems. So fill in the blank. So, depression, anxiety, whatever you want to say. I won't get into any details, but essentially this counselor kind of slapped a diagnosis on our client. Number one, they didn't have the training to do that. They weren't at that level. They weren't psychologists. And number two, it was inadmissible into evidence for a number of reasons. But so what I'm saying is they were allowed to get that document, they could see it, and we could exchange it and look at it, but we couldn't put it into evidence and have the judge consider it at trial because it's an improper opinion. So that's just one example of something where the world of discovery is much larger than the world of evidence that's admitted at trial, both because things are not allowed under our rules or they're not important to the case. And there's a term called relevance, which is used in evidence, and that is this piece of evidence connected to the issues at hand? And if it's meaningfully connected to the issues at hand, it's generally allowed in under relevance standards. So number one, is it relevant? And then we fit all these other rules to make sure we allow this evidence in. Basically, to be sure that it has a basis in fairness and truthfulness, meaning we need to believe there's some veracity behind this thing and that has some connection to the case in order to consider it. And so those rules apply. So let's talk about discovery. What can we do? We can send out a list of written questions called interrogatories and ask the other lawyer and their party to answer those questions. What are their names and dates of birth of your children? Have you been diagnosed with any medical problems? Have you ever served in the military? Have you been convicted of a crime? These are like basic questions that can be asked in interrogatories. Do you own any business interests? List those. Things of that nature. Where do you work? Where have you worked for the past 10 years? These kinds of things. Those can be answered in written questions. Next, we have what's called requests for production of documents. This allows you to ask for paperwork. These can include bank statements, your employment file at a job, medical records, if they're relevant, information about your house, about life insurance, about anything financial. That stuff is all relevant for discovery going back a certain number of years. These are ways to get these materials in discovery. The basic things people will do is, in the Chicagoland area, we do financial affidavits, which are mandatory. These are disclosures that contain information about basic info about the parties, assets, liabilities, income, and expenses. And you attach some baseline documents like recent tax return, pay stub, and a couple other things. And those are mandatory. They're basically 30 days into a case. The parties have to exchange those. They're not filed with the court, but they have to be exchanged. Some counties don't require them, though. For example, in Peoria, Illinois, where we have a case right now, not mandatory. Kind of interesting. Their rules are different. But there are some mandatory disclosures, and then you send out the interrogatories, you send out requests for production of documents, and then hopefully the lawyer and the party answer that stuff in a timely manner. What if they don't? You have other tools available. Subpoenas. So a subpoena is basically a court order that you're allowed to send out to third parties to ask for production of documents. So you send a subpoena to Chase Bank and they'll turn over bank records. You send a subpoena to Fidelity. They'll send over 401k records. You can send a subpoena to your soon-to-be ex's accountant and they'll have to turn over their file with all the information they have from an accounting standpoint. So there are ways to obtain these materials through subpoenas. It's basically a piece of paper that gets sent to the third party and it says, hey, you're ordered to turn over this material. And basically, if they don't, they can get in trouble with the judge. So I won't get into details about how you chase it down, but I'm just introducing these things and then we'll talk about how you can use them. So then there are depositions, which you can request by subpoena for third parties, so people not involved in the case, the accountant, a business partner of somebody involved, a relative if there's kid-related issues, a relative who has a lot of knowledge about the parenting. Folks like that can be subpoenaed to testify in a deposition where they have to swear under oath to tell the truth. And then they spend up to 3 hours testifying, answering questions under oath about the case. They are then committed to that testimony. Since they have sworn under oath that they were telling the truth, if they don't say the same stuff at trial, that can be a problem for them. And you can point that out in what's known as impeachment. You're showing that they weren't telling the truth. Maybe they're telling a lie now or they're misrepresenting a fact. So subpoenas can be a powerful tool. There's also a tool called request to admit. A request to admit is less commonly used, but it's a pretty powerful tool. A request to admit basically demands that the other side admit certain facts. I'll just make a very simple one. Admit that the parties were married on March 21st, 2014. And they have to admit or deny that. And when it's admitted, the term I use is it becomes magical. Whatever is admitted in a request to admit is binding on the court. meaning if somebody tried to testify later to something else, they wouldn't be able to do it. The party's bound to that. Requests to admit are very powerful tools. You can also request to admit genuineness of documents. You can attach documents and say to the other side, is this genuine? And they can admit, deny, or say they have insufficient knowledge. And requests to admit have very tight timelines. It's like still, is it 28 days, Rahul, or 30?
28.
28, yeah, to respond. So you have 4 weeks and you need to respond to the request to admit. So it's a good way to narrow some issues and nail down some key facts in a case. For example, you could get the other party to admit that there are irreconcilable differences leading to an irretrievable breakdown in the marriage. You could get them to admit to a move-out date and other facts like that. Maybe a date somebody moved out was important. So you can use it as a tool like that. So those are the basic tools, what we use to gather information. Now, if the other side doesn't respond to your interrogatories and your request to produce, or they're producing partial responses, one of the things you can do is first you ask nicely, you ask them politely to send the stuff that they didn't produce. Then you have a remedy with the court, and you can go to the court and ask in what's known as a motion to compel to force them to turn over the material they didn't turn over. The other option always, of course, is to send a subpoena and just cut out the middleman. That might not always be an option if you're trying to get material directly from the other spouse that's not available elsewhere. But most of the stuff we need in divorce are things we can get from third parties like banks and stuff like that. So motion and compel is one of the basic tools. Rahul, could you talk to us about Rule 218 Case Management Conference, discovery cutoffs? We're using the Illinois reference. I'm sure there's something similar in most, if not all, states.
Yeah, so a Rule 218 Case Management Conference or order, again, like you said, in Illinois, is a court order that's issued after what we call initial case management conference. This is different than a court date where the court just wants to know what's going on in your case, just as a check-in for a status check. And this is more about what are we going to do to progress this case towards conclusion. This order that you're referencing, Rule 218 order, outlines the case's progress, including providing deadlines for things like discovery, witness disclosures, settlement conferences, and ultimately the trial date, if it's there, or a date where the trial date will be scheduled. The goal of this essentially is to try to expedite a case and to manage it efficiently by setting clear timelines so that you're not in a wash cycle where you're just sort of like spinning around in the laundry machine, right? So you're in the spin cycle, as you say. So really what it is that you say, these are the dates, this is the roadmap, this is the path which this case will progress. So you know on this date, you're going to be divorced or your case is going to be getting towards resolution on that date. This will provide deadlines by which, like you had mentioned, discovery has to be issued, responded to, completed, if there's any depositions that need to be taken, if any requests to admit have to be propounded or submitted, all those, it'll have dates when you have to disclose the witnesses, including expert witnesses. It'll have dates when if there should be any settlement conferences, and then the date the case should be ready to go to trial. So the litigant, the court, the other side, you, your office, everybody knows what's going to happen in this case, and you're just sort of along for the ride.
And the big problem with these cases is lawyers and judges have been reluctant to enter these orders, in our experience, with some exceptions. And this varies county by county and judge by judge. But one of the objections is, well, judge, discovery is always coming in during these cases. It's like they always say we're not done. So the big objection is setting a trial date. Traditionally, judges in our jurisdiction, with the exception of Lake County, which has a tighter scheduling system, they don't set trial dates until discovery is done and they've had a pretrial conference, and generally speaking. The problem with that is these cases tend to just drag on then, and with sort of like no end in sight until the judge runs out of patience. And I've always argued judges should set early trial dates, but set them long, meaning, 90 days into the case, set a trial date, but make it 9 months away. What ends up happening is the case goes on for a year, the judge gets sick of it, and then enters a trial date that's 2 or 3 months away. And then people are all scrambling because they haven't done the work necessary. And it puts all kinds of pressure on everybody. Whereas if we had the trial date established early, we would all know what we were working toward. And it's just human nature to react to deadlines in a certain way. If there's no deadline, people sort of flop around with no end in sight, or they tend to, right? If there's a deadline of some kind, even if it's way out there, you're at least aware of it, and everybody's aware of it, and they tend to make progress. So, which is one of the reasons why I argue for 2 hours in mediation or collaborative sessions. Magically, people get stuff done inside 2 hours. I've seen it many, many times. It always works. It's just playing on human nature rather than we're going to mediate until we're done. who knows how long that takes, everybody gets exhausted. If you say we're mediating for 2 hours, magically people get down to brass tacks pretty quickly and they start talking about stuff because they know they got to be done in 2 hours. So similarly, discovery cutoffs motivate cases to get done either by settlement or by trial. When people are pushed to actually look at the case and do the work and think about it and talk to their client about it, much progress gets made. When there's no deadlines out there, things just sit there and go out into forever. It also provides opportunity for shenanigans and people getting mad at each other. And if you have a high conflict spouse, more time for them to file just goofy motions that are nothing but trying to punish the other person and kind of stir up trouble. So to alleviate that, one of the tools I suggest is bringing a motion to set discovery cutoffs. And the objection is going to be, oh, we can't set a cutoff because discovery's never done. Yeah, we can set a cutoff just fine. There are plenty of cases in civil litigation. I came from federal court and state court doing business litigation and personal injury cases. There are cases where the evidence changes and it's still okay to have cutoffs. Why? Well, you allow updates. We're not saying you can't update each other on new information. We're just saying you can't send new requests out and you can't come up with all new material after the cutoffs are done. So you create a reasonable cutoff or series of cutoffs where you have to have interrogatories done and answered. You have to have requests to produce done and responded to. And then after the cutoff, you're allowed to supplement and provide updates. No problem. There's nothing wrong with that. And you can set a whole schedule like Rahul said about depositions and things like that so that you'll get the job done. And there's no reason why it can't be done in divorce. It's done in other states. There's no reason why we can't do it here. But let's get back to tools for more general applicability. So this is sort of my complaint with how it's done in the Chicago area, but let's make it useful for everybody in the audience. There is undoubtedly some kind of way in which your lawyers or you individually can ask the court to create limits on discovery. How long can this take? And we call it a discovery cutoff. I'm betting that if your court doesn't already have local rules or their state Supreme Court rules governing the timing, your judge will be more than happy to enter these orders because that means the case will be done more quickly. So let's talk about tips and tricks that are applicable anywhere. You want to get a case done, you want to advance the ball. You've got somebody hiding the ball. Remember motions to compel, so you can push them to produce stuff. Subpoenas are very useful because you'll find that third parties tend to give up the information much more freely than the opposing party. Those are very useful. Don't hesitate to take a discovery deposition of the opposing party. So you say, what's that? Well, deposition, again, we talked about subpoena dep, discovery deposition, questioning the other spouse under oath about some issue about their finances and whatnot. So there's no reason why the hesitancy lawyers will say is, well, I don't want to take their deposition until I know everything in the case. There's no reason why you can't do a 2-part deposition. There's no rule against that. The rule says in Illinois, you get 3 hours to take a deposition. Well, take 1 hour, get the info you need, and make it clear on the record why you're doing it. Say it's because they're withholding information that I'm taking this deposition. And ask the guy, say it at the end so you're not putting people off. Ask the other person the questions. Tell me about your business. Where do you keep the records? What computer do you use for your company? Tell me about the bank accounts for the business. What bank do you bank with? And dig into all the stuff they're not telling you. And the person under oath is going to have a much harder time delaying or denying it. Won't look good under oath. So they're going to be answering those questions for you. Or if they don't, you could bring a motion to compel on the deposition to the judge, and the judge is going to think the other person's a real jerk and is going to think they're not truthful. And you've already started bending the meta case in your favor early on by showing them that they're withholding information that you should be able to get. So there's nothing wrong with an exploratory deposition where you spend a limited amount of time just finding out who's who. What's the name of your business partner? What's his address? How do I reach him? Then you take that guy's deposition or you send a subpoena to them for information. Who's your accountant? What's their name and phone number? What's their email address? You could go through all that stuff. It's sort of like we could do this the easy way by answering interrogatories and requests to produce, or the hard way, we'll take your deposition. There's no reason to be shy about it. So that's another tool. And guess what? Nobody likes depositions. Lawyers don't like preparing for them. Clients hate going to testify. Nobody likes being in the hot seat. So what ends up happening in my experience is a lot of people start talking about settlement in what's supposed to be the deposition. Everybody's finally looked at the case file and they come in and they actually start having a conversation. More often than not, they say, since we're all here, why don't we talk about settling this case? And it works. So consider that if you need to get a breakthrough in your case, make them come over and sit their butt down and go under oath, and you may see a breakthrough. So subpoenas for deposition, depositions of parties, but take a mini dep to get what you need and then use that for your discovery. motion to compel, subpoenas to third parties, request to admit. Don't be shy about using those. Those are fine too. And take a deposition of a third party if you need to. Talk to the key person. A lot of these people use like one lawyer or one accountant who knows a lot of stuff. And the accountant knows where all their accounts are and what their money flows are like. And if they have a wealth planner, that person knows a ton and they'll have to give you the info. So there are all these sorts of information. If just use your head, you can use that to push discovery forward in a case when you have a reluctant person. So another trick that's useful, by the way, if you've got a real devious spouse and you're worried they're playing games and they're hiding stuff, grab the computer before the case starts. These aren't dirty tricks. The computer's marital property. So the computer's sitting in your house. Don't break into the company and grab something. I'm talking about the home computer is sitting there. What you can do is, and my recommendation is do it properly by way of motion. I've done this before. I brought emergency motions with no notice when I had good cause that I figured the spouse was going to destroy data, meaning they're going to delete information or whatever. I had my client get a court order, grab the computer, client then grabs it, and I give it to a forensic specialist who cracks it and copies on the hard drives. And guess what? It's a treasure trove of information, the emails, the hard drives, everything, before they have a chance to wipe stuff. That is a viable tactic in certain cases. Then the other thing is engage an expert like Tracy Conan. Shout out to Tracy. She's a forensic accountant and she has a book called Find Me the Money, kind of like Show Me the Money. And she's great at tracking down hidden assets and people playing major games with assets and money flows. And hiring an expert like that is expensive, but worth every penny in that type of case. Just want to mention one thing. It's so important for you to be on top of your attorney with being targeted about discovery and knowing what's important, because too many lawyers cast a huge net and they don't really think about trial. The dirty secret is a lot of divorce lawyers are very poor trial lawyers because most of them don't have a lot of trial experience. Also, they didn't have good mentors and training in actual trial practice, because divorce trials, I say this and I don't mean to disparage people, but it's going to sound like it. They're not real trials. What I mean by that is if you go to a jury trial in criminal court, or you go to a jury trial in civil court, or a commercial litigation trial with a judge, the rules of evidence are much more strictly adhered to. And those of you who have been to both places know I'm telling the truth. I've been to both and I know it's true. That doesn't mean a divorce trial is easy. There are reasons it's generally easier. The rules of evidence are more lax, loosely applied in divorce court for some reasons that make sense to me now that I've been doing this for a while. I won't bore you with that, but to keep these cases expedited and not have them take forever, for efficiencies and fairness sake, judges tend to let in much more evidence in divorce trials because it's a court of equity. It's not a binary win-loss courthouse or courtroom like it is in a criminal case or in a civil trial where you can win or lose. There can be a not guilty or not liable finding in a personal injury case, right? In a breach of contract case, a court could find there was no breach, so it's a 0. In a divorce case, you're going to get divorced. It's all about shades of gray. So the courts tend to let in much more evidence. So what that means is the quality of lawyering is not as good. What that means to you is, even if you have a generally good lawyer, a lot of them aren't as strong at trial practice. They tend to throw everything and the kitchen sink into the trial court. What I mean is all the stuff they gather in discovery, it's books and it's binders and binders and binders, like banker's boxes full of material. If you can visualize that, now a lot of it's digital. But it's tons and tons of documents, thousands of pages. And they sort of throw it against the wall to see what sticks at the trial. That's very poor strategy and not good trial practice. Best practice is, what do you really need to know? What does the judge really need to know? Narrow it down to the absolute minimum and put that stuff into evidence. That's the most powerful method. If your lawyer understands that, then you trace that back to what you need in discovery. And the stuff you need in discovery is a narrower group of things, right? It just makes it that much more efficient. And you're wasting less time, you're being more focused. And what you're getting is going to be a higher quality product. Rahul, do you have any thoughts on that? You've been doing this a long time too.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of cover all the big salient points. It's extremely important to be very, very pointed at this. You don't want to take the shotgun approach, like you said, where you just sort of shoot a shotgun out there and see what it hits. You want to use the discovery tools because they're there to help give you an advantage in the litigation. They're there for everybody, but people don't know how to use it. You need to be able to use it like a scalpel so you can really, really get to the meat of the issue. You're not fighting about things that have no relevance. A court's getting annoyed. A court might give you one afternoon, 3 hours to do a trial. You're not going to throw the kitchen sink in that. You have to be very, very acute about providing the information the court needs that lands you at the solution you are looking for, the conclusion you're looking for. So I always like to think about it, work backwards. What are you trying to prove at the end of the day? Write that down. I'm trying to prove that this is a marital asset. Okay, how do I prove this is a marital asset? What do I need? Okay, A, B, and C. Great. Don't look at what do I have and then say, okay, now I'm going to use this. So then that way it gives you a roadmap as to things you actually need. And so I think that's very effective.
The bottom line is there are ways to resolve this, and there are tools the lawyers have and you have available to make this happen. For some reason, there's a reluctance. Well, I know why it is. There's a hesitancy among lawyers and clients to do these things because they cost money. So they say, well, you know, a discovery motion costs money, subpoenas cost money, deposition costs money. Yes, they do. But sitting around hoping that the other person's going to comply is not a good strategy. I mean, if they're complying, great. But if they're not, just letting the case go on month after month, you remember we talk about the cost of divorce. In my book, I Just Want This Done, I have a chapter called The 4 Costs of Divorce. There probably are 6 costs of divorce or more, but we talk about the time value. So the value of your time, opportunity cost. What else could you be doing? Cash burn rate. You're burning money, not just on attorney's fees, but on a lifestyle with 2 homes and whatever. Somebody's living in an apartment, et cetera. You're not focusing on your job because you're getting divorced. So it's costing you in all these other ways. So it's well worth it to spend some money on your lawyer to advance the case because you're saving time, which ultimately means you're saving money and you're driving the case to a conclusion. So instead of being passive, letting the case happen to you, being proactive and moving the case forward is the key. I hope that helps people out there. If you have questions, let us know. You can always email us. I'm Raif@stglaw.com, RAIF at stglaw.com. Rahul's RAHUL at stglaw.com. Email us comments, questions. Thank you to our sponsor, STG Divorce Law. Rahul and I are partners. I'm a managing partner at the law firm, and we're in Chicago and in the suburbs. We've been at this for over 30 years. We're here to serve smart, successful people in Chicagoland and help you get divorced or with your prenups and postnups. So please consider us for your divorce needs. Our law firm is at stglawfirm.com. That's stglawfirm.com. Very easy to Google STG Divorce Law. We show up everywhere. Also, Rahul, where can folks find you on social?
You can find me at Chicago Divorce and on LinkedIn with my name.
You got that sweet handle, Chicago Divorce. Good work. So you can find me at Rayford Palmer on Twitter, Instagram, or the artist formerly known as Twitter on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and just search my name, Rayford Palmer, to find where we are. You can always listen to previous episodes of the podcast. We're at episode 32, I believe. We've got a lot of great episodes out there. Easy to find wherever you get your podcasts, and also the video version on YouTube. So check us out on YouTube podcasts. Thanks a lot for listening. We appreciate you very much. Everyone have a great day.